social media strategy for your cause. So if you're wondering about who I am, I've been doing social media for about 8 years now. And I've worked on national charity events with small businesses and entrepreneurs and doing music festivals with 50,000 people. And one thing I noticed throughout all of these different types of clients is that, some content really gets shared very rapidly and some content barely engages anyone. Um, so I wanted to really learn about why that is. And so I did my thesis actually on social sharing and viral content. And I want to share some of that information with you, and it'll be peppered throughout our webinar today. So I'm the social media and content strategist at RAMP, and we work with a lot of charities and nonprofits, and we're also a B Corp, which means that we're audited on our community, social, and environmental impact. And recognizing that there are a lot of resource gaps and limitations with charities and nonprofits in the sector, I really want to share this knowledge to help you be able to make a difference and use social media to help raise awareness and funds for your cause. So let's talk a little bit about the world today. So I remember being a kid and going to Times Square and looking around and seeing so many billboards and ads everywhere and just being mesmerized by this. But going back as an adult now, you barely even notice any of your surroundings when you're there because you're so focused on your own social media channels and creating your own content. And there's so much noise in the world today. And people are really getting tired of it. They can't, there's not enough attention for all of the information that's out there. So people are starting to lose trust in ads, and they're really looking for recommendations from people they know versus content that comes directly from brands, and that includes charities and causes as well. So it makes our job a little bit more important so that we can cut through that noise and make a difference. So I really want you to take a moment and think about your own social media strategy. So whether you have a formalized strategy or not, you can always take some time to think about it a little bit differently. So just really inviting you to reframe how you think about social media and take this concept with an open mind. So, it's really easy to say, oh, well, social media is, anyone can do it, any millennial can do it, but thinking about it strategically so that we can make the biggest impact is really important. So that's where the piece about creating a social media strategy really comes in. So what is a social media strategy? Well, your social media strategy is really your roadmap to how you effectively communicate with your audience to reach your business goals or your charity and nonprofit goals. So there's something to be said about actually documenting your strategy. When you write things down, it just becomes more powerful and it gives you more of that map to being successful. And there are a lot of stats around this. So if you document your strategy, you're actually 538% more likely to report success. And 81% of goal-setting marketers are able to actually achieve their goals. So this is really important in making sure that you're successful in what you're trying to do on social. And I really like this quote, "A vision without a strategy remains an illusion." So as I said, if there's a difference between doing your own personal social media versus doing social media for a brand. And when you're looking at your goals and objectives as a business, then you really need to have a strategy to achieve those. So other reasons you need a strategy, well, it gets everyone in your organization aligned. You're working towards the same goals and evaluating content the same way. You can allocate and manage your resources. So, knowing that you're working in a charity or nonprofit, you don't have a lot of time and resources. Having a strategy actually helps you save time and money in the long run once that upfront work is done. And it also allows you to post more meaningful content. So once you understand who your audience is, you can actually give them more of what they want and what they value, instead of just kind of posting for the sake of posting. It also helps you create that engaged community. So cutting through the noise, as we talked about earlier, helping you nurture word of mouth and referrals, and also build relationships with influencers and people who are really connected to your cause. And of course, when you have a formalized strategy, you can also measure results. You can obtain data, look at metrics and insights. So a lot of times we get approached by clients who say, I want a viral video, or I want to be on Facebook. But when it comes to actually asking why they're there, that piece is yet to be figured out. So when we talk about reframing how we think about social media, it's not just, oh, we want to post a cat video, but it's, why are you posting that cat video? Are you trying to make people laugh? Is that part of your brand? And just really thinking about why you're using all of these different channels and what you're trying to achieve on them. And that's where strategy comes in. So I wanted to give you a few examples of some social media strategies that we did here at RAMP. The first one is for our client, the Ontario Society of Professional Engineers. So as you can imagine, an association for engineers isn't always the best source for the sexiest content, but this organization does a really good job of making sure that, they're inclusive of people at all stages of their careers, helping break barriers for women in STEM, and really just having a community that's inclusive to everybody and making sure that, people feel like they belong. So that's a really powerful story. And using that strategy, you can see how the content becomes very engaging. And of course, the results were great too. And another social media strategy we worked on was for our client, the Alzheimer's Society of Canada, for their Alzheimer's Awareness Month campaign. And, just realizing that there's sort of this stigma around Alzheimer's disease as being kind of an old person's disease. And, if you haven't had experience with Alzheimer's or dementia, you don't know anybody who's had it, you might not really understand that stigma. So instead of just talking about it to people who have experienced it, giving all Canadians access to quality healthcare, or making Canada a safe and inclusive place for people, all people, including people living with dementia, is something that most Canadians can get behind. So it's reframing that topic and making it more accessible to everyone and not just people directly affected by it. So that's kind of the strategy we took there. And again, it led to really great results. So how do you create a social media strategy? Well, here are the 7 sort of pieces. So you'll do research, you'll learn about your audience, you'll have your goals in mind, you're measuring results, you'll then create a strategy, look at what channels you're posting on, and that's when you can come to the post. So as you can see, there's a lot of upfront work, and then the post and what people see is kind of the last thing that you're going to be thinking about. So let's get right into research. So there's a few ways you can do research. You can have some interviews with key stakeholders within your organization, whether it's internal or external. You can review your strategic documents and plans and figure out, what are we really trying to achieve? SWOT analysis is a great tool, which is basically writing down all of your organization's strengths, the weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. And just remembering that weaknesses don't have to be related to social media, but it could be anything such as, oh, we don't have the resources to do social media in place, or maybe, we have a lot of competitors in the space and there's a lot of other runs and walks that are similar to ours. So there can be a few different ways that you look at this, and it doesn't always have to relate directly to social media. And then that helps you inform what you're doing when you want to communicate to your audience. And also looking at your competitors is important and seeing what they're doing and how you can improve or differentiate. And the goal in this research and data gathering stage is that you're turning that information that you gain into insights that help inform what you're doing. So really important to do the research and have that as a basis for your strategy. So, audience. I really like this quote by Theodore Levitt, who's a Harvard business, or was a Harvard business professor. And it's people don't want to buy a quarter-inch drill, they want a quarter-inch hole. So what this means is that people aren't so concerned in what you're selling them, it's more the outcome of what that does for them. What is the value? So I don't really care what kind of drill I get as long as I can hang my picture at the end. So when we think about social media, it's really about people, not brands. You want to learn about your audience and then give them meaningful content that resonates with them. Instead of just promoting what you want to promote and what's beneficial to you, you need to look at your data and use some audience analysis tools to figure out what people actually want. And that takes going beyond demographics and digging deeper to learn behavior, habits, and interests. So you might be asking yourself, well, how do I do that? So I'll give you a quick little synopsis of some tools that I use to learn more about social media audiences. So you want to think about who you're trying to reach, what are some of their challenges, and how you can help them. And a good thing to do once you gain all of this information is to actually create a fictional audience persona. And I'll walk you through an example one of that. So here we have an audience persona for Starbucks. It's Haley, the humanitarian hipster. She's a senior art director at an advertising agency, and I can promise you she doesn't work at Ramp. But you can see that they have, outlined some of the demographic information, but also, some of her interests. What does she like to do? And then they take it a step further by trying to figure out, what are Haley's goals? Well, she wants to come up with creative ideas. She doesn't have a lot of time, so she has some challenges. And she works at a small agency. And, how can Starbucks help her? Well, they provide her with energy to keep her going and help her stay awake. And then you can see how they actually use that information to come up with marketing messages. High quality coffee with the perfect blend of sincerity and excitement. We're more than just a coffee shop. We're the fuel needed to nurture every human one cup at a time. So knowing your audience, you can kind of craft messages that really resonate with them and help them get more in touch with your brand. I also wanted to show you a few examples of audience personas in the charity nonprofit space, just so you can see how that would relate to your organization as well. So these are examples from Make-A-Wish. You have Eddie, the empty nest volunteer, Manuel, the millennial donor, and Vanessa, the young professional. And, they all have different needs. With Eddie, it's, he wants to do more and stay connected to his adult children, and he wants to really give his time to something that matters. With Manuel, it's, he doesn't want to give to institutions. He wants to give to solve problems. He's looking to meet new friends, and he has digital traits, and he's really in tune with digital content. And Vanessa just wants to, make new friends. So you might have different content that meets the needs of these three different people. And understanding what their needs are helps you create content that resonates with them. So how do we find who our audience is? Well, there's a really great tool, and I implore you to write this down. So when you're in your back end of Facebook, you can actually go through as if you're making an ad, but then you don't actually have to make the ad. So you can actually find people who are connected to your Facebook page and go beyond just the normal built-in insights that you would see. And you can actually see, people's lifestyle and relationship status, their education level. And it's kind of creepy, but you can also see the pages they like and their interests. So you can imagine if, there's a lot of parenting magazines and books that people are liking, you can start to conclude that maybe there's a lot of people with children on your page, or if they're liking student discount pages and things that are more related to students, you can start to guess that, okay, maybe my audience is more students. So it allows you to pull some data and actually figure out who you're speaking to and then tailor your content to them. And you can also compare it with everyone else on Facebook. So that's a really, really great tool, and I really recommend using that if you have a chance to get to it. For Twitter, you can see through the built-in analytics some interests in occupation and behavioral data, but you can also use a free tool called Social Rank, which actually gives you people's most popular words in their bio, the most popular hashtags they're using, what emojis they're using, so you can actually tailor your content to use the same emojis that they use. You can use the same hashtags that they're using, and if you look at their bio words and you start to notice similarities, you can start to speak to that. I also really like a tool called Twitonomy. So you can see who your top influencers are, so the people who are most influential that are following you, and then you can also follow them back and you can start doing outreach to engage with them and share their content. You can also see when followers tweeted last, so every once in a while I like to go in and if people haven't tweeted in over a year, I'll just unfollow them to make space for new followers. And then on LinkedIn, you don't really have a lot of options for third-party tools, but the built-in analytics do show you, what country people are from, what their job function, seniority, industry, company size, and employment status is. And then Instagram, again, you have your built-in analytics, some really interesting data about the time of day when people are most active. And you can use Social Rank again to find out the hashtags, the bio words, and follower distribution, which is really interesting. So you can actually see how many followers your followers reach. So when you're looking for influencers, that's a really great tool. And then we at RAMP use Sprout Social, which is a paid tool, but it's not unreasonably priced, and it can show you who your top influencers are on Instagram. You can also use it to schedule your posts so that you're not spending a lot of time doing a content calendar every month, and instead you can just automate it. And it also allows you to pull really nice reports with all of your top posts and all of your metrics so that you can report to your board or to other people in your organization, and so you can adjust your strategy as needed as well. Okay, so now we're going to get into setting goals. Just as important in life as in social media strategy building. So you really want to look at your big picture. So what are you trying to achieve this year, in 5 years, and in 10 years? You really want to think about your cause from that bird's eye view. So not just looking at the immediate needs, but what are we trying to work towards in the long run? And then you want to write those goals down. So some examples that, just to get you started, could be expanding your event into a new city. It could be finding new donors, getting people to attend your event, increasing awareness of your cause, getting more people to visit your website, or all of the above. And then, I put this up front because it's really important to think about how you're going to measure your results. So you want to look at your goals and think about that. Why should we measure results? Well, you want to find your wins, your areas of improvement, and you want to be able to adjust. You also want to set a benchmark so that you can evaluate your performance over time. And if you need to get buy-in from your team, your board, or other decision makers, having that data is really helpful, especially for people who might not understand the value of social media. Having a baseline to measure is really helpful. So this slide might be a bit overwhelming, but I just wanted to dive into how to measure results a little bit further. A lot of people talk about return on investment. So, we're spending this much money. What are we getting in return? So there's a formula to calculate that. And I always say, calculating return on investment on social media is really like trying to quantify the unquantifiable. So, if you really wanted to come up with this calculation, you could think of your investment as, what is your labor costing per hour? How many hours are you spending on social? What are you paying for your social media tools? But the return is a little bit harder to calculate. So some ways you can do this are looking at historical data, such as your donor lifetime value, conversion rates. If you did a paid ad for the same goal, what would your pay-per-click cost be? However, I think the better way to quantify your return is return on engagement. So return on engagement is the idea that your brand strength leads to reverberating influence. So it's asking yourself, what is thought leadership, trust, participation, positive reactions, word of mouth, or referrals actually worth to you? So if you look at the chart on the right, someone might go and visit your website and then see your Facebook icon there and follow you. They might interact with your Facebook page for a little while, but not necessarily, make a donation until much later down the line. However, that initial interaction does have a return at the end. You just can't see the direct path. So while people might be interacting, you're not going to see a direct conversion, and it's much harder to measure. Another way that you can think about return on engagement is, while someone might hear about your cause and talk to their friends about it, maybe you're doing a run and they tell their friends to join and make that recommendation. And that leads to much more funds being raised. But again, you don't really see that direct conversion from word of mouth to funds. So engagement can look like comments, likes, shares, retweets. It can be people downloading content. It could be social referrals to your website. It could be people filling out a contact form or signing up for a newsletter. But it's not always a direct conversion, so it's a little bit harder to measure. A better way to measure results is key performance indicators. So you want to make these SMART, which means they're specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, and timely. And I'll give you a few examples. So let's say you're trying to expand your event into a new city. You might want to research and build partnerships with 3 influencers in that new city by the end of 2019. So that's a measurable, realistic, timely objective. Having more people at your event. You might want to create content with a register call to action to increase event attendance by 10%. And then you can measure how many people actually clicked that link to get your results. Okay, so now that I've talked your head off about results and ROI and all the boring stuff, we can talk about the more fun thing, which is, creating your actual strategy to achieve your goals. So I wanted to really take some time here and give you a few examples because strategy isn't always very easy to explain. So let's say your goal is to expand your event into a new city. You might create a strategy that says, we want to showcase the unique event value and create new opportunities for influencer involvement. And then you can go back to that measurement of researching and building partnerships with 3 influencers in the new city by the end of 2019. So you can see how that strategy directly relates to your success measure and your goal. And then a second example, getting more event attendees. Well, okay, how are we going to do that? So we can showcase event highlights and showcase some new participant stories to attract those new attendees. And then we might create content with a register call to action and increase event attendance by 10%. So you can measure how many people click, how many more attendees you have, and then you can see if you actually achieved that goal. So I just want to dive into a couple quick case studies. One is a strategy we created for a client. So they really wanted to position themselves as a thought leader regarding newcomer employment. They wanted to keep the value they provide top of mind among business owners and inform employers about free high-quality recruitment and HR tools. So now you can see a few social media posts that we created for them. So integrating internationally trained newcomers into the workplace makes life better for everyone. Hiring tips for small businesses. No HR department? No problem. All of these posts are directly related to those strategic pieces that they were trying to achieve. So you can see why that strategy piece up front is so important, because now when people see these posts, it's very clear what they're trying to do, and it's also providing value to the people seeing them. Another example is something we just recently completed for a client that was trying to ignite the movement that unleashes the multiplying power of girls by creating easy ways for Canadians to get involved in that cause, or empowering youth as leaders of a movement for the rights of all children, especially girls. So knowing that this is what they're trying to achieve, when you look at their content, um, you can see, the youth empowerment is really strong. And it's sometimes almost overtly saying that, let's empower youth to stand up for girls' rights, or teach girls to be somebody's, not somebody's. So, or even having shareable content with that really strong call to action. You can see how that strategy played into what the content is and why that content is now going to get better results. So let's just talk about channels. There are a lot of social media channels that you could be on. However, it's really important to think about which channels are most beneficial to you rather than trying to spread yourself really thin across every channel possible. So I'm going to just go over the top 4: Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, and Instagram. But that doesn't mean that these are the only 4. So you might want to do some research and figure out, what channels your audiences are using. So Facebook. While Facebook has a lot of content competing for attention, that being said, people do use it to engage with brands. So it is a good idea to be there, but there's so much information, and people are really on there, to connect and socialize and see what their friends are doing and reading and wearing. And there's a lot of different features that you can use on Facebook as well. Which brings me to the elusive Facebook algorithm. I included this because someone always asks me about this, so I just thought I'd be preemptive in explaining what it is. So because of all the information being shared so rapidly on Facebook, Facebook has created an algorithm to filter the information that is most important to you. So there's a piece about active interactions, which actually boost your rank in the algorithm. So when people share, comment, or react to your content, you rank higher. And then passive interactions, such as clicking, viewing, or hovering, rank lower. So you really want to create that engaging content, and that's where the strategy comes in, so that people are commenting, they're sharing your posts, they're reacting. So how do you do that? Well, some tips and tricks. You want to generate conversation between like-minded people. So it's not only about people commenting on your posts, but it's actually them talking to each other that boosts your rank in the algorithm. So live videos are a really great way to do that because they average 6 times more interactions than regular videos. So people are talking to each other, they're engaging. You also want to think about creating shareable content. And that's shareable in public, so on your timeline, but also in private in Messenger counts as well. So it's not always shares that you can see, but you want people to really talk to their friends about the things you're posting and generate those conversations and discussions. And you also want to really create meaningful and authentic engagement and tell stories that humanize your brand. Twitter, also very noisy, lots going on. But even more people are mentioning brands, and people really like to feel that positive feeling of having a brand reply to their messages, and so much so that they actually do take action after a brand tweet, whether it's visiting the website or going to this other social media pages or interacting with the brand in some way. So people are on Twitter to discover something new and interesting. 74% of people use it to get news. They're on there for customer service, and they really like to talk about current events, pop culture, and live tweet from sports games, about TV shows, and other events in real time. So you want to really jump into those conversations. So what do you post? Well, you want to post bite-sized bursts of info in 280 characters or less. This is a really great place to showcase your thought leadership. Instead of just posting an article, you can add a perspective to it, add your 2 cents to it, and showcase that expertise. And then you don't want to just listen, but you also want to jump into conversation. So I always say Twitter is the only place that you can eavesdrop and join a conversation without being creepy. So get on there, talk to people, and don't just brag about your cause and your brand, but actually interact and engage with others. Okay, so Instagram. Also a lot going on there. 4.2 billion liked posts daily. Lots of people are now using stories. And 1/3 of the most viewed stories are actually brand stories. So I really strongly suggest creating a story strategy for your brand. Also, most top brands post 5 times a week, so don't be afraid to post a lot. And people do take action after a brand post, so whether it's visiting the website or interacting in another way. And then people always ask me about hashtags. So I just want to mention that, yes, hashtags are great. One hashtag averages 12.6% more engagement. I usually use up to 29. So definitely, use hashtags, but research those hashtags, make sure they're relevant. And I can send you so many different examples of disaster hashtag usages and crises that happened. So just take a look at the hashtag before you post it. Make sure it's relevant. Make sure you know what it's about. And why are people on there? They're sharing photos and videos, telling visual stories, showcasing real-time snippets of their life. And I had to add this in. It's actually more popular now than Snapchat. So depending on who your audience is, you can take a look at whether they're more likely to be on Snapchat or Instagram. But I would say if you're going to invest in one, invest in Instagram. It's a much more widely used platform. And Instagram also has an algorithm which rewards posts with high engagement, so likes, comments, video views, saves, shares, direct messages, and story interactions. And actually, if your profile responds to comments, it gets ranked higher. So you really want to create content where audiences spend more time. And you may have noticed this, but feeds are actually organized now by likelihood of interest instead of chronological order. So that's an example of the algorithm at play. So how do you post really engaging content on Instagram? Well, you want to post things that are visually stunning. Use strong creative captions because if someone stops to think, that means they're spending more time on that content. Videos are great because, again, they take longer to consume, which boosts your algorithm rank. And carousel posts, so those multi-photo posts that use a swipe call to action. Well, you don't have to use the swipe call to action, but you can. Those also take longer to consume, so people spend more time there. I mentioned the 29 hashtags. And then you really want to start those engaging discussions with your followers and use the stories feature to boost your engagement as well. LinkedIn. So people are on here as more of a professional social media network. It's their online resume. They're there to network, connect with companies, follow industry influencers, look for jobs. If you're a business, you might be on there to find employees. And there's a wealth of features that are on there as well. So you want to be posting more professional content. In the case of a charity or nonprofit, it might be, research studies that relate to your cause, case studies, might be industry-related articles or job seeker content, or thought leadership content as well works really well here. Okay, so now that we've covered all of those pieces, we can finally get to the piece where people are actually seeing what you're doing. So you can see there's a lot of upfront work that goes into it, but now you're ready to create a post. So here's a little sample content calendar. I like to do all of my content this way because it helps you align what you're posting to your strategy. And I always say if it's not goals-based and it doesn't align with what you're trying to do as an organization, don't post it. It's pointless content. There's already so much happening on social media. You don't need to fill it with other other content that's not, furthering what you're trying to do or meeting your audience's needs and resonating with them. So you start off with the strategy piece. So what channel are we posting on? In this case, or in this example that I created, it's a Facebook post, and then your goal is to get new participants to register and fundraise for your cause. And then your content theme might be, you might set different content themes. So in this case, we're going to do a participant story. So what does the image say? Well, I chose a great quote from the fictional Chloe from Ottawa, who believes in a future where no one fears cancer. And then the copy in the actual post is, as a breast cancer survivor, Chloe knows how important it is to run for the cure. Not only did she raise funds to end cancer, she made new friends who believe in a cancer-free future. Who are you running for? So you can see that engaging question at the end also gets people a little bit more involved. And then you have a call to action, register today and make a difference. Hashtag if you choose to, hashtag end cancer. And then the media, so in this case, it's a link and it's going to your registration page. So out of this, you'll see that people only see some parts of this, but the strategic piece is more for your own understanding of what this post is trying to achieve. Now, if you're a bit confused about the image copy and post copy, I'll show you one example. So here's one example from Sick Kids. Post copy is at the top. So that's what goes in the actual post. And then the copy that goes on the image is different. So, do you have a Sick Kids connection? Add your name to our family tree. That's the post. And then the image says join our family tree. So just so when you're building out your content calendar, you can keep that in mind. So now that we've created a post, I just want you to really reflect on what we talked about today. And I'll take you back through the steps again. So how to create a social media strategy. You do your research, you think about who your audience is and gain some insights on what kind of content resonates with them. Maybe you create some personas to help you categorize what you're posting. Then you think about your goals as a cause and as an organization and what you're trying to achieve from a bird's eye view over the long term. You think about how you're going to measure your results, and then you strategically come up with a way to achieve your goals. You think about what channels you want to be on and why you're there, and then you can start creating really engaging content that your audience resonates with and creates a powerful and engaging presence for your cause. I just want to also let everyone know that, that was a lot of information to take in. If you feel that you want some help with creating your social media strategy, we're more than happy to help you. And I'll send an email follow-up just to let you know as well. We're doing a free 20-minute consultation for everyone who joined the webinar today. So I'll send you a follow-up with that information, and then we can just discuss your social media presence, any questions that you have, but also more immediately, if you do have any questions right now, I'd be happy to answer them. So just feel free to use the chat bar and let me know if there's anything you'd like to discuss, and I'd be happy to answer those questions. So everyone's asking for a copy of the presentation, and I'll follow up with you in an email about that. We also do have a worksheet that we share when we do our social media workshops. So, I'll discuss that with you afterwards, and I'd be happy to help share some of this information with you. Does anyone else have any questions? Oh, you're welcome. Anna says it was a great presentation, thanks. I'll just leave a few more minutes since we actually are ahead of schedule. So if anyone wants any clarification on anything, or if you have any questions about your own social media, just let me know and I'll be happy to answer them. And then, as I did mention, I'll follow up with everybody to talk about the consultation and about sharing the content with you as well. Do I do individually targeted campaigns to each audience? So the issue is that you can't, so when you're doing a post, you can't specifically target it to a specific audience. You can through an ad. So if I was doing a Facebook ad, I would definitely make sure that my targeting was very specific to who I'm trying to reach. On social media organically, I would say I do a mix of content for each audience. So knowing my personas, I might do a specific post to the millennial fundraiser, and then I might do a different post that reaches the empty nesters. So just making sure you're doing a variety of different posts based on who your audience is so that you can create content that really resonates with them. I hope that answers your question. So I guess the short answer is not specifically targeted organically, but more so just having a mix of content that resonates with each audience. How do you develop content when you have such a diverse audience? Well, again, that depends. So you can have your content buckets. So depending on what you're trying to achieve, if you have a very, very wide range of audiences on one channel, I would say look at who your majority is. So if your majority is 80% females and you have 40% of people are 18 to 24, I would try to cater content to the majority and then do some smaller amount of posts for the minority of people just to make sure you're kind of reaching everyone. But when you're thinking about your goals and what you're trying to achieve, it might not be that you're specifically overtly speaking to the audience directly, but it might be more just thinking about it. So I'll give you an example. We have one client who on Twitter has about a 35% majority of 35 to 44-year-old women, most likely with older children. So in that case, we might do a few posts that say, parents, have you talked to your kids about X subject? But not every single post is going to say that. So that way you have a nice mix, but those specific topics will actually cater to that audience more directly. I hope that answers your question. But if you want to book a follow-up consultation, I'd be happy to dive into your specific needs in more detail. Jessica has a great question. If we're encouraging our employees to interact with our organization's channels, is it more valuable for them to like, share, or comment? I would say the most valuable is sharing. And that's because, when you're on social media, you're kind of speaking to your existing audience. But when someone shares your content, it actually goes outside of your sphere of influence into a larger reach. So now you might be reaching people who have never interacted with you before. They might gain interest and they might be more likely to follow along and join your community. So sharing is the most valuable because it expands your organic reach and allows you to reach more people with your content. Commenting and liking is good for boosting engagement rate, but if you're encouraging people to interact, then it's not really authentic engagement because they're being asked to do so. So it'd be more valuable to see comments and likes from people in your audience network than your employees in that case, although it will boost your engagement rate if you're just looking at numbers and data. No problem. Does anyone else have any other questions? Okay, well, great. I'll hang around for a few more moments just in case anything comes to mind. And if not, I will send you all a follow-up email, and please feel free to share any feedback with me. Thanks, everyone. And, you can also email me, follow me on Twitter or LinkedIn as well. Thanks, everyone. Enjoy the rest of your day and happy Friday.